Bite the dust. The blind leading the blind.
Oh, yeah, you hear those all the time.
Right. Can a leopard change its spots? The apple of my eye. Salt of the earth.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to bet you've used at least one of those phrases, like, just this week.
Oh, absolutely.
And what if I told you they all originate from the exact same ancient collection of texts? The Bible.
It is, it's genuinely remarkable how deeply embedded those idioms are in just, everyday language.
Yeah.
They are woven into the very fabric of modern Western civilization. And often they're used by people who have, never even opened the book themselves.
Right. But I do have to throw a curveball at you right out of the gate, though.
Okay, lay it on me.
God helps those who help themselves.
Yeah.
It sounds incredibly biblical, right? People quote it all the time as if it's this famous verse.
It does. It sounds exactly like it belongs in, I don't know, the book of Proverbs or something.
Yeah.
But it's actually not in there at all.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that is an ancient Greek proverb that was later popularized in English by people like Algernon Sidney and, of course, Benjamin Franklin.
Oh, wow. Okay, Benjamin Franklin. Well, that brings us perfectly to the mission for today's deep dive.
Right.
Because we have compiled just a massive stack of sources for this one. I mean, archaeological journals detailing ancient manuscript discoveries, linguistic data from global translation databases.
It's a lot of material.
It's huge. We've got historical records of Roman emperors, deep textual criticism of ancient texts.
Mm-hmm.
And today we are unpacking the historical evolution, the mind-bogglingly meticulous preservation, and the dramatic, just against all odds, survival of the Bible over thousands of years.
It really is an incredible story of survival.
Yeah, we're looking at a text that has influenced global laws, ethics, and obviously language down through the millennia.
Exactly. And, looking across all this source material we've gathered, what emerges is a really strong thematic core that kind of anchors this entire discussion.
Okay, what is that?
Well, we're talking about a massive library of texts, right? It was shaped by shifting ancient empires, written by around 40 different authors.
40?
Yeah, about 40. And it spans an absolute minimum of 1,000 years of continuous writing.
Wow.
Yet, despite being composed across totally different continents and eras, it maintains this singular, unshakable focal point throughout both testaments.
Right.
And that focal point is the person of Jesus Christ.
Let's unpack the sheer logistics of that. Because whether you're, say, a history student analyzing ancient preservation, or a believer, just someone insanely curious about how information actually survives, the meat grinder of human history.
Right, the meat grinder.
This is basically a masterclass in it, because when we think of a quote-unquote classic piece of literature, we usually picture a tortured genius in a room for a few years, right?
Like a single author working away.
Yeah, like Charles Dickens wrote A Tale of Two Cities in under a year.
Mm-hmm.
Leo Tolstoy spent about 6 years writing his massive epic War and Peace.
Which is a long time, but yeah.
Right. Even someone agonizing over a text, like Miguel de Cervantes with Don Quixote, took maybe 20 years. The timeline for this text completely shatters that mold.
It completely shatters it. The Bible operates on a historical scale that doesn't really have a parallel. I mean, the writing process alone, like I said, took a minimum of 1,000 years.
That's just wild to think about.
And it features some 40 diverse authors. We aren't talking about a unified guild of writers living in the same city, collaborating in real time.
Like a writer's room.
Right, so there's no writer's room. You have Moses, who is an Egyptian prince turned desert liberator living in the Bronze Age.
Okay.
Then you have Amos, who's just a shepherd. You have Matthew, a despised Roman tax collector in the first century.
Ah, quite a variety.
And Paul, a highly educated Jewish Pharisee who also held Roman citizenship.
So they were writing from, desolate wildernesses, literal dungeons, grand palaces, places of exile. They didn't even speak the same languages.
No, they didn't.
Let alone share a cultural moment. So how do you get a unified narrative out of that kind of chaos?
Well, you have to look at the continuous forward-pointing trajectory of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures.
Okay.
It operates with this incredible internal consistency. Prophecies are a really prime example of this.
How so?
Take the book of Micah, for example. Written in the 8th century BC, it predicts that a Messiah would be born specifically in the small village of Bethlehem. It doesn't offer a vague Nostradamus-style prediction that could mean literally anything.
Right. Someone will do something somewhere kind of prophecy.
Exactly. It names the actual geopolitical location. Or look at Psalm 22, written by King David roughly 1,000 years before Jesus.
Okay, 1,000 years.
Yeah. It contains these lines, dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me, they pierce my hands and my feet, they divide my clothes among them, and cast lots for my garments.
Oh, wow. I mean, that is a wildly vivid description of a crucifixion.
Very vivid.
And David is writing this centuries before the Roman Empire even existed, right?
Yeah.
Let alone before they invented crucifixion as a method of state execution.
Exactly. And then, some 400 years after the Old Testament is totally completed, the New Testament arrives.
Right.
And it documents Jesus as the exact fulfillment of those highly specific prophecies.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, the New Testament Gospel of Luke records Jesus on the cross and specifically notes the Roman soldiers dividing his clothes by casting lots. It matches the ancient psalm down to the most granular detail.
Wow.
So Jesus becomes the ultimate unifier of these really disparate writings. The Old Testament sets the stage, and the New Testament centers directly on his life, his teachings, and his redemptive character.
You know, I like to think of it like a massive, sprawling cinematic universe.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
But imagine it's planned across 1,000 years, directed by dozens of directors who never even met each other,
Yeah.
who don't even speak the same language, and somehow they maintain perfect continuity toward one central character.
Right.
If you tried to coordinate that in Hollywood today, it would be an absolute disaster within 2 movies.
Oh, 100%. The cinematic universe metaphor is actually a really great way to understand the sheer complexity of the canon.
Yeah.
Every author is adding to the lore, but none of them are contradicting the foundational rules established centuries prior.
Wait, hold on, though. This is where my brain just kind of starts to hit a wall.
Okay, why?
Because if a text is being copied by hand on animal skins or papyrus over 1,000 years,
Right.
how does it not just succumb to the ultimate game of telephone?
Ah, yes.
You know how human memory works. If I write down a message and hand it to you, and we pass it down a line of 50 people, by the end of the line, the message is completely garbled.
Completely different, yeah.
So how do you prevent systemic data corruption in the ancient world?
To understand how they prevented that data corruptions,
Yeah.
we really have to look at the obsessive, almost terrifying precision of the ancient scribes.
Terrifying.
Yeah, honestly. In ancient Israel, scribes learned their craft in family-like guilds. And the Hebrew word for scribe is sofer.
Okay, Sofer.
And the root meaning of that word isn't to write. It literally means to count.
There were counters, like accountants of words.
Yes, they were mathematical auditors of the text.
Wow.
The Jewish Masoretic scribes, who made handwritten copies of the Hebrew scriptures, worked under rules that are just hard to fathom today.
What kind of rules?
Well, for one, no word or letter could ever be written from memory.
Not even one word.
Not one. It didn't matter if the scribe had memorized the Torah from childhood. He had to look at the original manuscript, point to the word, and speak the word out loud before his pen could even touch the parchment.
Okay, so the telephone game analogy breaks down immediately because they aren't relying on memory at all.
Exactly.
It's a closed-loop system of visual and auditory verification for every single pen stroke.
It is, and it goes even deeper into detailed ritual purity. The reverence they had for the text was absolute.
How so?
Before they began work, scribes would fully immerse themselves in a mikveh, which is a ritual bath, just to cleanse themselves.
Holy, a full bath every time.
Yes. And if they were about to write the sacred name of God, the tetragrammaton, Yahweh,
Yeah.
the scribe had to stop, wipe his pen clean, and focus his mind completely. If a king walked in and addressed the scribe while he was writing the name of God, the scribe was strictly forbidden to look up or answer.
Are you serious? A king could be standing right there.
A king could be demanding his attention, and he would have to ignore him.
They were essentially putting themselves into a state of extreme hyperfocus.
Very much so.
It's like having a manual backup system that operates with tighter security protocols than a modern server farm. But earlier you called them counters. What exactly were they counting?
They counted every single letter.
No, Mom.
I'm serious. They knew exactly how many letters were in a specific book. For example, they knew the Torah had 304,805 letters.
That is insane.
They even knew the exact middle letter of the entire Torah. It was the Hebrew letter Vav in Leviticus 11.42.
So they would actually check that.
Yes. When a new scroll was finished, they would physically count the letters to find the middle one. If the middle letter of the new scroll didn't match the original, they knew a letter had been added or dropped somewhere along the line.
And if they found an error, say just a single spelling mistake on an entire massive animal skin scroll,
Yeah.
do they just like scrape it off and write over it?
No. If a single error was found that couldn't be corrected within very strict parameters, the entire scroll was considered unfit for sacred use.
The whole thing. Trash.
The whole thing. It would be placed in a geneza, which is a storage room for damaged manuscripts, and eventually buried in the ground out of respect. It simply had to be mathematically perfect.
Okay, I mean, we can read about their rules all day, but where is the actual proof that this mathematical cross-checking worked?
Right.
Because 1,000 years is a very long time. Empires rise and fall. How do we know the text from 500 BC is the same as the text from 500 AD?
We didn't actually have ironclad proof of the mechanics until 1947.
Really? That recent?
Yeah. 1947 brought about one of the greatest manuscript discoveries of the modern era.
Tell me about it.
So a Bedouin shepherd boy was out with his flock near the Dead Sea in an area called Qumran. He threw a rock into a cave on the side of a cliff, expecting to just hear a thud. But instead he heard the shattering of pottery.
Oh, wow. The Dead Sea Scrolls. This is like the Indiana Jones moment of biblical archaeology.
It literally is. Inside those caves were tall clay jars filled with ancient scrolls that had been hidden away by a Jewish sect called the Essenes.
Okay.
And these manuscripts dated back to between the 3rd century BC and the 1st century AD.
Let's contextualize that timeline for the listener just so we get the gravity of this.
Sure.
Before that teenager threw a rock into a cave in 1947, how old were the oldest copies of the Hebrew scriptures we actually had in our possession?
The oldest complete copy of the Hebrew Bible we had was the Leningrad Codex, and that dates to around 1008 AD.
So we suddenly leaped backward in time by a full millennium.
Yes, exactly.
We found texts that were 1,000 years older than anything we previously had.
And this is where the scribal precision is empirically validated. Scholars took the Dead Sea Scroll of the Book of Isaiah, which is a scroll that is 24 feet long, by the way.
24 feet.
And they laid it side by side with the Masoretic text from 1,000 years later. They wanted to see exactly how much the telephone game had ruined the text over a 1,000-year gap of hand copying.
The suspense among academics must have been suffocating. What did they find?
They found astonishing precision. When they compared the ancient text to the modern translation, the core text was virtually identical.
No way.
The 1,000-year gap led to just 13 minor spelling variations.
13?
13. And mostly it was things like adding a letter to signify a vowel sound, which doesn't change the meaning of a single word.
Wow.
The mathematical counting, the ritual baths, the speaking out loud, it worked. The preservation was flawless.
13 minor spelling variations over 1,000 years. That is, I gotta say, honestly, it's chilling.
It's remarkable.
So the Old Testament-ary accuracy is practically mathematically sealed. But let's shift gears to the New Testament, which specifically focuses on the life and teachings of Jesus.
Okay.
The timeline here is totally different, right? It was written much faster, over about 50 years, all in Greek.
Yes, very different timeline. But when we look at the scholarly criteria used to authenticate ancient manuscripts, the New Testament textual survival rates absolutely dwarf any other piece of ancient Greek or Roman literature.
For the history buffs listening, let's do a side-by-side comparison.
Sure.
How does the New Testament stack up against the undisputed classics we all learned about in school?
Let's take Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars, or the Histories by Herodotus.
Okay, big ones.
For these classical masterworks, we generally have about 8 to 10 surviving manuscript copies.
8 to 10, that's it.
That's it. And the time gap between when the author originally wrote the text and the earliest copy we actually possess is anywhere from 900 to 8,350 years.
So wait, we have fewer than a dozen copies of Caesar's writings, and they were copied 1,000 years after he lived.
Yep.
But no historian on Earth questions if Caesar actually wrote them. We just treat it as established historical fact.
Exactly. Nobody doubts it. Now contrast that with the New Testament. We have over 5,000 available ancient Greek manuscript copies to compare.
5,000 versus 10.
Yeah. And we have fragments, like the John Rylands Papyrus,
Right.
dating as early as 125 AD.
Wow.
That is an interval of roughly 30 to 50 years from the original writing, not 350 years. The wealth of biblical texts, both in sheer quantity and closeness to the original events, is just unparalleled in antiquity.
Having thousands of copies is great, and that's a huge data set, but it doesn't explain the selection process.
What do you mean?
Like, how did they decide which books actually made it into the Bible? because you constantly hear conspiracy theories about shadowy church councils in smoke-filled rooms arbitrarily deciding what was in and what was out.
Right, the Da Vinci Code kind of stuff.
Exactly. People think they were cutting out books that didn't fit their political agenda.
That is a very pervasive modern myth, but it is just a myth. The early church councils, like the Council of Carthage, they didn't randomly decree what was authoritative.
He didn't.
No, they were simply formally recognizing the books that the early Christian communities had already established as authentic long before the council met.
Oh, interesting.
Returning to your cinematic universe metaphor, the early church knew the difference between the core canon created by the original founders and later, fan fiction.
And fiction. I like that. So how did they authenticate the core canon? What were the actual criteria?
Books became authoritative almost immediately upon writing because they were penned by eyewitnesses or their closest associates.
Okay.
You had the apostles Matthew and John, who were direct disciples of Jesus. You had Mark, who worked closely with the apostle Peter.
Right.
And Luke, a physician who traveled extensively with Paul. The early believers trusted these writings because they had direct apostolic provenance.
So they knew exactly where it was coming from.
Exactly. When later texts popped up in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, like the Gospel of Thomas, they were rejected not because of some political conspiracy, but because they were obvious latecomers.
They just didn't fit.
They didn't match the historical reality or the established theology of the first century eyewitnesses.
Okay, I'm going to push back on you here, though, on the concept of an eyewitness account in the first century.
Okay, push away.
You're telling me that Matthew, decades after Jesus died, sits down and writes the Sermon on the Mount word for word.
It seems like a stretch, right?
Yeah, because Jesus lived in an oral culture. He didn't write anything down himself. Human memory doesn't retain 30-minute speeches word for 30 years. How is that historically reliable?
It's a vital question. First, we have to recognize the nature of Jesus' teaching style. He didn't give dry academic lectures.
Right.
His teachings were brilliantly designed to be sticky. He used parables, like the parable of the lost sheep or the Good Samaritan, which are vivid, narrative-driven moral stories.
They're easy to picture.
Very easy. And they employed rhythm, repetition, and hyperbole.
Like the blind leading the blind, salt of the earth. These are phrases literally engineered to hook into the brain. They're like ancient earworms.
That's a great way to put it, ancient earworms.
Yeah.
But beyond the oral stickiness, there is fascinating historical evidence regarding written records from that time.
Oh. What kind of evidence?
Well, Greek-speaking Jews from that period utilized a form of shorthand writing called tachygraphy.
Wait, shorthand, like a modern stenographer in a courtroom.
Exactly like that.
I always pictured these guys just sitting around a campfire, stroking their beards, trying to recall what happened 30 years ago.
No. The Roman Empire ran on bureaucracy, and bureaucracy requires rapid documentation. Matthew, the author of the first gospel, was a tax collector for the Roman government.
Right, he was a tax collector.
And a basic qualification for a Roman tax collector, or a publicanus, was the ability to record information rapidly in real time using Greek shorthand.
Wow.
He had to document inventory, trade goods, and disputes at the speed of speech.
That completely reframes the picture.
It does.
You have a guy whose literal day job is taking rapid dictation, standing in the crowd while Jesus is teaching. He has the professional skill set to record long discourses accurately.
Precisely. The disciples weren't just relying on decades-old memories. They had the skills, the cultural practices, and likely early written notes to preserve the teachings accurately right from the start.
That is just, wow. Okay. Knowing we have 5,000 ancient manuscripts backed by professional stenography and eyewitness accounts is remarkable.
Yeah.
But what elevates this from just a neat historical fact to a truly dramatic narrative is realizing that some of the most powerful empires in human history actively dedicated vast military and political resources to hunting down and burning these exact texts.
They absolutely did. The survival narrative of the Bible is written in blood and ash. It survived vicious, systemic attempts to erase it from existence entirely.
When did that start?
Well, let's look at 167 BC. Antiochus IV Epiphanes, a Hellenistic king ruling over Israel, decided to forcibly assimilate the Jewish people. He ordered all copies of the Jewish scriptures to be torn to pieces and burned.
This wasn't just a casual ban on a book then. It was a full-blown extermination campaign.
It was brutal. Anyone found possessing the Book of the Covenant was executed by royal decree. Mothers who circumcised their children were killed. Fast forward to the Roman Empire in 303 AD. The Emperor Diocletian, initiated what is known as the Great Persecution.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. He didn't just burn biblical texts. He ordered churches to be razed to the ground and Christians to be stripped of all legal rights.
It's complete erasure.
He was so confident he had permanently eradicated their religion that he actually erected a monument over the ashes of a burned Bible.
Wait, a monument?
A monument boasting, "The name of Christians is extinguished."
The name of Christians is extinguished. The hubris is just astounding. Diocletian really thought he had permanently deleted them from the historical record.
He was certain of it. But for history students looking at this, it's vital to analyze how the shifting of imperial power and persecution actually caused the exact opposite effect.
How so?
It directly changed biblical preservation. Let's go back slightly to 70 AD, when Rome laid siege to Jerusalem, destroyed the city, and completely sacked the Holy Temple.
Right, which you can still see commemorated today on the Arch of Titus in Rome, depicting soldiers carrying away the temple treasures.
Exactly.
You would think that destroying the absolute epicenter of the religion, burning down the temple where they stored their most sacred scrolls, would just be the fatal blow.
It really should have been. But the destruction of Jerusalem scattered the Christians and Jewish people in a massive diaspora across the Roman Empire.
Okay.
They fled to Rome, across North Africa, and deep into Asia Minor. And this geographic shift actually accelerated the spread of the texts.
Because they had to take it with them.
Right, because they no longer had a central temple. They needed reliable, first-hand written accounts that could be copied and shared rapidly among these scattered underground communities.
So by trying to crush it in Jerusalem, the Roman military accidentally caused the text to go viral across the entire Mediterranean basin. The persecution essentially decentralized the network, making it impossible to destroy.
That's a perfect way to phrase it. But eventually, the Roman Empire stopped persecuting the church and instead absorbed it.
Right, under Constantine.
Yes. And as the church's power centralized in Rome, a new, completely different barrier emerged. The Bible became locked into a single language, the Latin Vulgate.
The Latin Vulgate.
For centuries during the Middle Ages, the common people couldn't read or understand it.
This is the Latin bottleneck. It's essentially the ancient equivalent of a massive paywall or intentionally complex legal jargon.
Very much so.
If only the highly educated clergy know Latin, they hold a total monopoly on the information. If you're a peasant, you just have to take their word for what the book says.
Exactly. And furthermore, producing a single handwritten copy of the Latin Vulgate could take a scribe up to a year.
A whole year for one book.
Which made the physical book astronomically expensive. The common people were entirely disconnected from the written text. This forced the church to use alternative visual methods to teach the stories to an illiterate public.
Which explains the architecture of the era. The massive stained glass windows in Gothic cathedrals weren't just decorative.
No, they weren't.
They were the 12th century equivalent of a graphic novel. They were sequential art designed to teach the narrative of Jesus to a population that was basically locked out of the source code.
That is exactly what they were.
So how did the text finally break out of that Latin bottleneck?
This brings us to the translation revolution and the explosive, often lethal, shifting power dynamics of the Protestant Reformation. Yes. Translators believed deeply that ordinary people needed to encounter Jesus directly in their own mother tongue without political or religious intermediaries controlling the narrative.
Breaking that monopoly was incredibly dangerous work, right? You were essentially threatening the power structure of medieval Europe.
It was deadly. In England, in the late 14th century, an Oxford scholar named John Wycliffe translated the Bible from the Vulgate Latin into Middle English so the common people could actually hear it.
Okay.
The church authorities despised him for this. In fact, 44 years after Wycliffe died, the Pope ordered his bones to be dug up, burned to ashes, and thrown into the River Swift.
What? They were so enraged that he translated the book into English that they exhumed a corpse just to burn his bones.
Yes.
That is some architectural level generational grudge holding.
It was entirely about control. And then in the early 1500s, Martin Luther, a German monk, discovered the central message of grace while studying the text in their original language.
Right, leading to the Reformation.
Exactly. He realized the biblical text taught that forgiveness was a free gift from God, not something you could just purchase from the church via financial indulgences.
Yeah.
This realization led to his famous 95 Theses and his massive effort to translate the Bible into everyday German.
And The English counterpart to Luther is William Tyndale, right? This is where the story reads like an espionage thriller.
It really does.
Oh.
William Tyndale was a brilliant linguist, fluent in 8 languages. He realized Wycliffe's translation was flawed because it was a translation of translation, English from Latin.
Right.
Tyndale bypassed the Latin entirely and translated the scriptures directly from the original ancient Greek and Hebrew into English.
Wow.
He famously clashed with a clergyman, vowing that if God spared his life, he would make a plowboy know more of the scriptures than the educated clergy did.
A plowboy. He wanted the absolute lowest rung of the agrarian working class to have direct access to the most powerful texts in the world.
Yes.
But doing that in 16th century England meant he was an outlaw?
He was a hunted man. He had to flee England and work in hiding in Europe. His English Bibles were printed in secret and smuggled back into England, hidden inside bales of cloth and sacks of flour.
Just incredible.
But it cost him his life.
Yeah.
Tyndale was betrayed by a friend, captured, and held in a freezing dungeon for 500 days.
500 days.
He was then strangled and burned at the stake. His final prayer before dying in 1536 was, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes."
He gets martyred just for putting the book into English. Did his final prayer have any effect?
It did. In an incredible twist of history, just a few years later, King Henry VIII authorized the Great Bible to be placed in every church in England.
Wow.
And it was largely based on Tyndale's exact smuggled translation.
We've gone from scribes taking ritual baths in the desert to empires burning texts to linguists getting strangled so a plowboy could read it in English.
It's quite a journey.
But there's a difference between it being legal in English and it actually getting into the hands of the public. Because a giant printed Bible in the 1800s was still an incredibly expensive luxury item, right?
Yes, very expensive.
How did the average peasant actually afford one?
To understand how it reached the common person globally, you have to look at the story of a 16-year-old girl named Mary Jones.
This story completely blew me away. Let's set the scene for the listener. It's the year 1800, and we are in rural Wales.
Mary Jones lived in extreme poverty. Bibles were scarce and highly expensive. From the age of 10, she spent 6 years saving every spare penny she could earn.
6 years.
Keeping bees, doing chores, just saving for a single copy of the Bible in the Welsh language. Finally, in the summer of 1800, she had enough money.
Okay.
She walked 26 miles over mountainous terrain, mostly barefoot, to save the wear on her only pair of shoes.
A 26-mile trek across mountains barefoot, walking through a thunderstorm just to purchase a single book. The physical and economic toll of that is staggering.
She arrived in the town of Bala and found Reverend Thomas Charles, the man who sold the Bibles. He was so profoundly moved by her sheer determination that he gave her 3 Bibles for the price of 1.
Oh, wow.
But the ripple effect of her journey is what actually changed history. Reverend Charles went to London and told the story of Mary Jones to Christian leaders.
Yeah.
It went viral, so to speak. They asked, if this girl is willing to walk 26 miles barefoot for a Bible in Welsh, what about the rest of the world?
A barefoot teenager essentially shames the wealthy elite of London into action. What did that spark?
Her story sparked the formation of the British and Foreign Bible Society in 1804.
Incredible.
That single act of determination ignited a global movement of Bible societies dedicated to translating and distributing the text affordably. It completely changed the trajectory of global linguistics.
It's the ultimate butterfly effect, which brings us out of the 19th century and into the digital age. We've gone from Tyndale's illegal printing press to Mary Jones's 26-mile walk to the glowing rectangle sitting in your pocket right now.
Yeah.
How has modern technology shifted the landscape of biblical access?
The acceleration is just staggering. Consider that the Gutenberg press started the print revolution in the 1450s by printing a Latin Bible.
Right, the very first major printed book.
By the year 1800, around the time of Mary Jones, there were about 71 complete Bible translations in existence.
Okay.
But look at the linguistic data today. Out of the 7,164 officially known languages in the world, 736 now have complete Bibles.
And how many languages have at least a portion of it translated?
Over 3,658 languages have some scripture translated. When you do the math on global populations, out of the 8 billion people alive in the world today, an estimated 7.2 billion people have some scripture available in their native mother tongue language.
And we can't ignore the digital delivery system. Mobile apps in the 21st century have completely shattered the old geographic and cultural barriers that required smuggling books in sacks of flour.
Absolutely. The digital age has allowed billions of global users instant free access. Platforms like the YouVersion Bible app are seeing hundreds of millions of downloads, offering the text in over 2,000 languages simultaneously. It is, without question, the most universally accessible piece of data on the modern internet.
The sheer irony here is staggering when you really think about it.
How so?
We are talking about texts that were originally etched onto animal skins and fragile papyrus by nomadic shepherds, prisoners of war, and persecuted minorities running for their lives from the greatest military empires on Earth. And today, those exact same words drive the largest global linguistic data distribution network on the cutting-edge modern internet.
It is a remarkable paradox.
Yeah.
But, if we pull back and look at the thematic wrap-up of everything we've discussed today, what is truly compelling is that through every single medium, whether it's papyrus, parchment, the mechanical printing press, or the digital pixel, the central message has remained entirely fixed. From the meticulous Masoretic scribes calculating the middle letter of the Torah, to Tyndale translating in secret, to digital apps reaching 8 billion people. The continuous thread has always been pointing to the life, teachings, and redemptive figure of Jesus.
It's an incredible journey. We started with the obsessive mathematical precision of ancient scribes ensuring not a single letter was lost. We looked at how these texts survived hostile, systemic purges by emperors like Antiochus and Diocletian, who literally erected monuments celebrating the eradication of the texts. We saw manuscript evidence in the Dead Sea Scrolls in the New Testament that completely dwarfs the classical literature of Caesar or Herodotus.
It dwarfs it,
We watched the text break out of the Latin paywall through the blood of translators and finally land on the smartphones of billions of people.
And along the way, it permanently shaped our modern laws, our concepts of human rights, and the very idioms we use in our daily conversations.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought. We live in an era of rapid digital decay. Our hard drives corrupt, software becomes obsolete in a decade, and website links go dead every single day.
That's very true.
We struggle to preserve data from the 1990s. I want you to mull this over. What does it say about humanity and perhaps about the profound nature of this text itself? That a collection of writings started 3,000 years ago by desert wanderers, fishermen, and outcasts is not only mathematically intact, but is the most universally accessible piece of data on our global internet today.